There was a homework assignment where you had us establish our budget and identify where we can reduce costs. Like what's, needs versus wants. And you're like, you have the opposite problem. I have to increase. Nothing much more I can reduce unless I move, which I did. But really it was about making more. And it's like, I have complete agency to make more.
What does it mean to live a meaningful inner and outer life? And how do our personal finances fit in that? We tackle those questions and others in the School of Financial Freedom podcast. We talk about the role of money in our personal growth and spiritual liberation, the concrete math of budgeting and saving and investing, and how all this relates to the life you were meant to lead. Each episode is an interview with a former student of my online course, Financial Freedom 1, where they explain their favorite lesson and years later, what financial, behavioral, and spiritual impact it had on them. I'm Douglas Soy, founder of School of Financial Freedom, and your host. Glad you're here. So what I love about Ivellisse's story is this idea that learning personal finance has no effect on financial behavior. That they find that in studies all the time. In logic language, it's necessary but not sufficient. And what I love is you're going to hear a story of someone who actually started changing their behavior once they started learning what to do differently. Stay tuned for this special episode.
Hi, I'm Ivellisse, and this is the School of Financial Freedom podcast.
Welcome, Ivellisse. It's nice to see you again.
Thank you for having me, Douglas.
Remind me, when was the last time you took FF1?
So I completed FF1 late 2021 on my second attempt.
Okay, so you took it the first time when?
In 2018.
So this is like the perfect lesson to be talking about, right? 315, which is the goal is not learning, the goal is about change. And so we're going to talk about today your gradual change in your financial behavior. Tell us why you took FF1, first of all.
I've been casually learning about money without having too much of it. And in my early career, I was just so focused on making sure I had a job and a job I loved and I'm a mission driven, creative professional who's made a career using the power of communications to make change. And I've dibble dabbled in-house at nonprofits and at creative agencies. And then I started my own. And so my first job, I made $37,000 in Boston. I was told it was non-negotiable. Retroactively, I could see how there was a lot of implicit bias and racism happening and being told that by a white hiring director. But that's neither here nor there.
Oh, no, it's here and there.
Yeah, exactly. So I started at $37,000.
How old are you?
I was 21.
Okay.
When I left the corporate world at 27, I was making $73,000. And so I wasn't in a career that was getting me anywhere fast financially, but I was building the skills. And that was what was important. And throughout that, I made a cross-country move from the East Coast to the West Coast. So I was living in the Bay Area on a nonprofit salary of $45,000, which was an upgrade from 37. So I thought I had a promotion. And I was surrounded, like all my friends worked in tech, and I'm seeing my friends like printing cash and like talking about stock options and things I just don't understand because I'm not in that world. And so I started my business in the Bay, and in running a business, it strengthened my financial foundations. I've taken accounting classes. And what really attracted me to the School of Financial Freedom was you looking at the nuanced layers of money, our relationship to it, the role of capitalism, environmental harm, etc., which is different than like your classic business books or finance books. So from a values perspective, that resonated with me. The first time around, I underestimated how much work it would take. At the time, it just wasn't the right time. And in 2021, I had the space. Excuse me. I still struggled to keep up, but I did the work this time. And I feel like ever since 2021, I put a lot of things into practice. And then even as a consumer, I have a lot of the learnings in my head every time I go to pay for something.
Wait, so, well, tell us about your business. Had you started it when you took FF1 in 2018? Tell us about the business, promote yourself for a second.
Thanks. Yeah. So Bombilla is a creative agency for social change. And we use the power of communications to make nonprofits and small businesses shine bright. I'm traditionally trained in public relations, self-taught in graphic design, and I have a knack for matchmaking talent with clients and for managing the creative production process. So whether it's branding strategy, graphic design, messaging and positioning work, we'll do it. As long as it's something that we're excited about and a cause that we're passionate about. Started in 2018 as a solo founder, quickly had enough demand to start delegating to contractors. In year 3, which was 2020, I received capital, confidently took the risk to bring on employees. So I had payroll, insurance, and around 2021, I was definitely questioning my entrepreneurial pursuits, just being weighed so heavily with the responsibility. But I was crushing goals. In 6 years, I've been able to generate nearly $2 million in revenue that has been used to operate this business, has been circulated to vendors and contractors, who are primarily folks of color. And in my class with you, the number one key takeaway was, I don't pay myself enough. I wasn't paying myself well at all. And so in learning that and getting stronger at managing business finances and personal finances, working with tax strategy as an S Corp, I slowly started inching towards paying myself more and paying myself first, which is also important too. So yeah, I'm not, like I mentioned to you earlier, I'm not debt free just yet. I'm on that path. And with my spreadsheet that I got going, it feels manageable. Especially with my student loans, like definitely, I mean, I am in my mid 30s, so it's been a while that I've been paying them off, but like the end is near,
You're going to throw a party when that is done.
Yeah, for real. And so yeah, like I'm a work in progress and I'm proud of the progress I have made up to date. And I think above all, quality of life has improved because I am spending money in ways that mean more to me. So it's like more conscious of it. And then your money and meaning newsletter that came out, I don't know if it was today or yesterday, really resonated because I've noticed myself on how I hold back on splurges that would make me so happy, and then it's like, but like, who am I to add one more thing to the landfill? And you know what I mean? It's like I go down this spiral of like all the ways you could look at this thing I'm about to buy, and I'm just being hard on myself.
And sometimes you're allowed to delight yourself. You have a right to that.
Exactly. So yeah, it's like I don't buy this every day, and yet I'm holding back like it's a sin.
All right. Well, it's super interesting that you chose lesson 315, which is called "The Goal is Not Knowledge, the Goal is Change." It's the very last lesson in Financial Freedom 1. Tell us why you chose the lesson, and tell us what's in the lesson.
Yeah. So I chose this lesson because it resonates with my experience in actively walking on a path towards financial freedom and how much of it is a lifestyle and really a commitment. Because like even to this day, I'm still reading books about money and listening to podcasts. A year or two ago, I bought an I-9 bond from the government. I'm like, who am I? Because they were all the rage with like a 9.62% return. So, doing little things like that where I'm surprising myself. And then, yeah, just being able to be there, like with the changes that I've made, I've been able to, like I mentioned, like improve my quality of life, scale back the company, move across the country to be with my family, finance all of that, still keep a roof over my head. My family needed some legal support last year, and I was able to front the cash. So it's like now I see why it's so important to have savings, um, for whatever reason, whether it's to delight yourself on a rainy day or for an emergency, instead of like living paycheck to paycheck. And then interestingly, living, like I still live in a city, but it's not like the Bay, not like San Francisco or Oakland. And so I feel like I spend less here on the day to day than I feel like there were daily expenses in the Bay, where now it's like, oh, I only spend money when I when I go grocery shopping or something. So even changing your environment kind of switches up your money habits. And then in this chapter, you also talk about the next class. And in terms of change, right? Like, so I had an intent to take this class in 2018. That was 6 years ago. I took it 3 years later. Here we are, 2.5, 3 years later. And I still haven't taken FF2, but it's because I don't feel like I'm ready yet. I'm still working at it. Not to say that there isn't value in learning before you're ready. And that's where I was at in my early 20s. Like I was reading about, that I feel like until the moment I was starting to play with a real amount of cash with the business, and not being afraid of commas and zeros, it's like, oh, how do I use this so that I can build some wealth for myself? Because I'm not necessarily coming from generational wealth either. So like my parents aren't homeowners; they still live paycheck to paycheck. I mean, I'm the eldest daughter, first grandkid, first generation. So it's like I've let go of that pressure, to be like the ultimate success story for the family. But even on the literacy front, it's like it took a long period for me to feel ready to be like, okay, I got this.
There was a long incubation period, you're saying, huh?
Yeah, because yeah. And then in these last 5 years, I've made a ton of progress.
So I'm just curious, how does, like, because a lot of people take, personal finance courses and they learn a lot, or they read a book, but it doesn't sink in, like, right? Like, they learn it as like, oh, I know these principles now, but they don't actually change their behavior. Why were you able to change your behavior?
I was definitely committed to figuring out this problem. So, for example, you made me realize that I'm not paying myself enough because there was a homework assignment where you had us establish our budget and identify where we can reduce costs. Like what's needs versus wants. And you're like, you have the opposite problem. I have to increase. There's nothing much more I can reduce unless I move, which I did. But really, it was about making more. And it's like I have complete agency to make more. I'm my own boss. And so if you want, promotion or a salary boost, you got to go find that money yourself. And so one of the books that I read, in addition to taking the class, was Profit First. And I'm now at 10% when I started at 1%, increasing every quarter and siphoning money just for me that I can use as play money once a quarter, or at the end of every quarter, take 50%. So out of that full book, I took one thing and I've been consistent with it. So it's like I can't do everything at once. But I think it's unique that in running my own business, it's like my laboratory to practice it on both ends.
Interesting. I mean, yeah, there's the saying that the biggest lie of personal finance is that you can just cut your budget and you'll reach financial independence. When really it's the opposite. Once you can establish a budget, the way to get to financial independence is actually to grow your income. Because for most of us, including you just can't cut more off the bone, right? Like
Right.
you actually have to find more meat.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so
exactly.
for the majority of us, hitting financial independence is actually just stepping into our income earning potential. So talk about Profit First. This was a brand new idea to you. Like, I remember when you took the course, the idea that you should pay yourself first before you paid anyone else was like shocking to you.
Yes. I think there were a couple of things happening. I'm a recovering people pleaser, so it was manifesting in that way. I was taking care of everybody else and putting staff first because that's what books tell you to do. Leaders eat last, right? And then also in trying to run a socially conscious business, I felt guilt in paying myself more, even though I wasn't paying myself market rate. And that's why looking at jobs appears to be appealing because it's like, oh, wow, I can make 175 at full benefits. That sounds so nice. And I've even shared with you my desire to go to law school as well. And that one's more out of like a professional aspiration and desire. There is an opportunity to generate income from that, but it's not an accelerated gateway, I'm aware. But I think it'll round out my business skills. But anyways, so I felt a lot of guilt. I was putting everyone first. I learned a lot of leadership lessons and all of that. And I think I took like the mission driven business too far in that concept where it's like, I'm not running a nonprofit. It's okay to get paid. I'm an owner and operator. And also when you're growing, your priority is making your business grow. And in the case of an agency, like the product is your people. And so that also made sense. But I wasn't setting myself up for success with the amount of financial stress I was carrying, how overworked I was. And in scaling back the company, it's been great. Like, for example, I was able to I ended last year 6 months without staff, only 10K short in revenue from the year prior.
So you got to keep most of the revenue.
Yeah, the last 6 months of the year. So it was a lesson in efficiency as well. Because I feel like I got a little too carried away being like Oprah, like, you get a job, you get a job. I want to pay everybody the best. Like, my goal was to get health insurance. Like, I had to be, you know what I mean? It's like, I wanted to be the best boss. We had a 4-day work week. Like I leaned on intangibles to show the team I cared because I couldn't, you know, we were incrementally growing. So it's like first they were contractors and they were part-time and then started converting people full-time, but it was still too much work for one person. And then I realized like, oh, I'm in control. This isn't fun anymore. So, being my own boss and having that agency of freedom, it was a difficult decision and messy, but ultimately I'm better for it.
Well, it sounds like it was a big lesson in like you trying to take care of everyone else when you weren't even meeting your own needs. And yeah, that's an interesting thing. I always say that personal finance is a path to personal and spiritual growth because you can't do anything until you look into yourself and see what you're doing as opposed to what everyone else is doing and blaming the world for your problems, right? And then running a business is like the next level of that. Like you run into yourself far more in running your business than if you're an employee.
Oh yeah, exactly. So yeah, that, you know, uh, paying myself more definitely was like steering the ship. Like even though I'm in control of the bank account and could take a check any day, it took a while to get to a better place, and that did require being smarter about the projects we take on, how we price them, etc. And now being solo, it's like I can just like relax, professionally rest. I'm still working, but I'm just not going as hard. Yeah, and I've also have learned too, like one kind of like childhood remnant from money behavior perspective is like focusing on buying things that I need. This goes back to the delight. So it's like Yes, I need toilet paper. No, I don't need that lip gloss or something. You know what I mean? Or like that pretty notebook for my daily journaling or something like that. Um, I don't know, like I kind of realized how I was treating myself like my parents did when we were younger, because naturally, like money was tight. So it's like, oh yeah, I'll get you what you need for school, but I'm not gonna get you that backpack. So it's like I recently started indulging a little bit more. And Profit First helped with that because the point of cutting yourself a check from that pool is to buy. He specifically says in the book, he's like, don't use it to pay off debt. Don't use it. Like, he's like, spend it on something silly. Spend it on something like splurge because we work too hard to not take an owner's draw, right? It's like the salary is paying myself for the professional work. But what about a treat? Like we could be our own bad bosses to our own selves.
Yeah, I mean, like we're talking about, like before, buying yourself a lip gloss is not going to make or break you. Paying yourself and paying yourself before you pay anyone else is going to make or break you, right? Like, and in a business, if you make $10 or $20,000 more by just advocating for yourself or going for a bigger contract or negotiating better, that's going to do a lot more than trying to skimp and save on whether you buy yourself a pretty notebook, right? So it's a sense of scale too.
Yeah, exactly. Hmm.
Well, you've talked enough about Profit First that you're going to have to explain it.
So from a business model perspective, I'm like, oh, there's only like if I multiplied how many hours my team was working times our billable rate, I can predict how much I can make. It's like, and then I'm working with nonprofits. So this is where like being super socially conscious kind of bit me in the butt because it's like I'm trying to generate profit from nonprofit.
Yeah.
So I have to go to the funders. So I gotten better at like who has the money because there are like I once saw an RFP for $500,000 for a rebrand. I didn't go after it because I don't have that kind of team. I'm not gonna like fake it till I make it with that one, but there you can make money in this space, but I feel like I gotta get more savvy on who can pay for the same project, just at a different scale.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we talk about in financial freedom too is that you're not going to make more money by working harder. You have to actually make different choices. And it sounds like ever since you've been on this path, you're beginning to make different choices that actually support yourself. It's interesting because the analogy for profit first in the business world and the personal finance world, there's this idea of you got to pay yourself first. It's this idea that your savings rate comes in before even your needs or your wants. Like you have a savings rate, or you're never going to have a savings rate if you don't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because it's like if you don't put it away, and like so for example, like with the paycheck, if you paid yourself first, okay, so one of my vices is iced coffee, right? I actually got high quality coffee maker, espresso maker from Facebook Marketplace, and I use it so much that now I barely go outside to get coffee. So I've solved that problem in a way. But anyways, so if my vice is iced coffee and I gave myself a budget, but I'm paying myself first, then that reduces how much I have left for coffee. It's a psychology trick. Because technically, it's like you don't spend, if the money is in there, you can't spend it. So if you stock it away first, then you actually are on a budget. Or you're overdrawing or something, or charging it to the card.
I mean, quite frankly, if you've done your savings rate first, you're allowed to buy as many iced coffees as you want. It's not going to disturb your personal finances.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, this is assuming like you're living like paycheck to paycheck or something. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Well, any closing thoughts?
Well, I highly recommend people take this class, even if it takes them a couple of times, complete it. And yeah, it's been years later and I still apply so much that I've learned. And it's still all a work in progress. I'm very grateful for you for putting it all together. And I would say that like it it not to be cliche, but it is a journey. And I'm only a few years in and have made really great progress, and you know, it all compounds and there'll be some snowball in the future, I hope. But yeah, I feel like with knowledge, it makes it more accessible and approachable, less intimidating. And then with practice, it becomes easier.
That's a great way to end it. I think, just seeing where you were then and where you are now, like occurs to me as you keep on building up your knowledge, where you're going to be in 3 to 5 years is going to be completely different than where you are now. And it's just your ability to be able to learn and grow and actually apply the things that you're learning, which is so admirable. So thank you, Ivelisse, for coming on today.
Thank you, Douglas. Thank you so much.
Thank you for everyone for listening. This is the School of Financial Freedom podcast. I'm Douglas Soy. We'll see you next time. Thank you for tuning in to the School of Financial Freedom podcast, where we ask, what does it mean to live a meaningful inner and outer life? And how do our personal finances fit into that? We hope you enjoyed this episode and it helps you live with an increasing sense of empowerment, integrity, and agency in the world. For more information, resources, and to re-listen to this or any past episodes, visit our website at schoolofinancialfreedom.com. There you can find out when the next cohort of Financial Freedom 1, the online course is. If you've enjoyed today's show, please consider leaving us a review, as it helps more people find us and join our community of people interested in the intersection of money and personal and spiritual growth. I'm Douglas Soy, founder of the School of Financial Freedom. You can also find me on Substack, where you can subscribe to my popular newsletter, Money and Meaning. I also love hearing from readers and listeners, so write me at www.douglassoy.com. I'm grateful that you listened, and I hope that this episode has given you hope and insight into taking control of your finances to live the life you want.